Welcome. In order to get Unreal Engine from source, we have several steps. Now, all of the links will be provided in the resources for this video. Our first step is to get Visual Studio. Now, if you're taking this course, you probably already have it, and the free version, Visual Studio Community, is more than enough for what we need. So you can download it here, and once you do, you'll have the Visual Studio installer. So once you've downloaded the Visual Studio installer, go ahead and open it up. And for this course, I'll be using version 2022. Make sure to install that one and not 2019. Now, to make sure we have all the necessary workloads, let's click on Modify. For an Unreal Engine source build to work properly, we need the following workloads: .NET Desktop Development with C++, and Windows Application Development. And scrolling down a little more, we have Game Development with C++. Please make sure you have these workloads checked. And we also need the latest .NET framework, as well as the targeting packs for the previous versions. Now, the reason for getting the targeting packs for previous versions is because Unreal Engine uses various parts of the .NET framework, so getting those targeting packs makes the SDK backwards compatible. To make sure we have all of those targeting packs, click on Individual Components. And under .NET, check all the checkboxes next to Targeting Pack to make sure that you have them all. After that, you can click on Install. I don't see Install down here because I already have it installed. Now, if like me, you already have Visual Studio installed, make sure you're up to date with the latest version. If you're not, then Visual Studio Installer will have an update option like I have for 2019. If you see that for 2022, make sure to click that update button. Once we have Visual Studio installed, we're ready for the next step. We can close out of that. And the next thing we should do is set up Visual Studio for Unreal Engine specifically. I've provided you with the link to the documentation for Epic's recommended settings for Visual Studio. So I'm going to keep this documentation on my other screen, and I'm going to launch Visual Studio 2022. Now, we don't need to open any projects just yet, so I'm going to click Continue Without Code. And here's Visual Studio. So I'm just running down the list in the provided documentation page to make sure that we have all of the recommended settings. So first, we're going to right-click on the toolbar at the top and select Customize. We're going to click on Commands. We're going to select Toolbar, open the dropdown, and find Standard. Now here in the preview, we're going to find Solution Configurations. Click on that and Modify Selection, and just make sure that your width is set to 200. This makes things easier to read for that dropdown in Visual Studio. After setting it to 200, click OK, and we can close this. Now find the little drop-down on the standard toolbar, add or remove buttons, and find Solution Platforms. If that's not checked, make sure it is. It may be checked by default for you. And after that, we want to turn off the error list window. The error list window often shows false errors in Unreal Engine, and this can confuse you, so it's best to turn it off. Go to Tools, Options, and we're going to find Projects and Solutions. Click on that, and uncheck Always Show Error List if build finishes with errors. You'll notice that mine is off, so go ahead and click OK. Now, other optional settings are to turn off Show Inactive Blocks. Go to Tools, Options, and find Text Editor. Expand that, find C, C++, and click on View. Under Inactive Code, we have Show Inactive Blocks. Mine is set to false. You can go ahead and set that. We can also set Disable External Dependencies folders to true. This will hide unneeded folders in the Solution Explorer. To do that, under C, C++, we click on Advanced, and we can set Disable External Dependencies folders to true. Okay, so now that we've configured Visual Studio to our liking, we're ready for the next step. We now need to install Git. Git is a version control system that allows us to version control our project. Now, you don't have to version control your project for this course. That's not a requirement. but we do need Git in order to get Unreal Engine from source. So the steps are outlined on this page. The link is in the resources. And to download Git, we can get the latest version from this page. I'm going to download the latest 64-bit version for Windows. That's going to give me this executable. I'm going to run that, and I'll follow the steps to install Git. Now, the setup wizard may change from time to time, but it's your standard setup wizard. You shouldn't have any problems installing with this. I'm going to check Launch Git Bash and Finish, and I have my Git Bash here. We'll be using the Git Bash to clone the Unreal Engine source code repository. So I'm just going to minimize the Git Bash for now, and we now have Git. Now we can verify that we have the latest Git version by opening our command prompt. If you're on Windows, you can hit the Windows key followed by CMD Enter. That's going to open your Windows command prompt. We'll be using this from time to time throughout the course. And we can verify our Git version by running the command git -- version. And I can see that this is the version of Git that I have installed. So now that we have Visual Studio and Git, the next thing we need is a GitHub account. So if you don't have a GitHub account, use the link in the resources and sign up for a new GitHub account. Once you're done, you can sign in. Now, once you're signed in, Git will probably tell you that you should set up MFA or multi-factor authentication. Make sure you set that up. Now, in order to get Unreal Engine from source, you also need an Epic Games account. You probably have that already as well. If you don't, simply go to unrealengine.com and sign up. So go ahead and sign into your Epic Games account. And go ahead and click on your name, go to your account page, and go to Apps and Accounts. This used to be called Connections, now it's Apps and Accounts. They may change it in the future, so just be aware of that. But this is where we can link our different accounts. And the account that we need to link is GitHub. So find GitHub, click on Connect, and make sure that you have your GitHub account linked. Follow the steps you're prompted with, and authorize Epic Games for your GitHub account. Once you've linked the account and authorized Epic Games, GitHub will send you an email asking you to join the Epic Games organization on GitHub. Make sure you click this within 7 days of this process. Once you're done with that and signed into GitHub, you should be able to access the Epic Games GitHub page. This was not available to you before joining the organization. So this is the Epic Games GitHub. This is where we can clone the official Unreal Engine source code, and we can do that by clicking the green dropdown and copying the HTTPS URL. This is what we will be using in the Git Bash, so go ahead and copy that. And now we're actually ready to download the Unreal Engine repository. And you can also scroll down to read information in the README here. So I recommend just quickly reading through this. The most important part is the branches section, where it says the release branch always reflects the current official release. These are the stable releases. They're extensively tested. So you're the safest working with the release branch. And if we scroll up to the top, there's a drop-down that says release. That's the branch that we're currently on here. But as you can see, we have access to all the other branches, some of which are in development and hence not stable. So we are going to follow the recommendations and get the release branch. So after copying the HTTPS URL, we'll go back to our Git Bash. Now, if you close that, you can always get it from the Windows search bar. I'm going to pull up the Git Bash, and what we need to do is download the repository, which includes all of the Unreal Engine source code, onto our machine. I'm just going to pull up Windows Explorer, and I'm going to place my source build here. You don't have to place it on your C drive. I typically place source builds on my main drive. It's an SSD. That's going to give me the best performance. And the file path shouldn't be too long. If it is too long, you can run into issues. I'm going to place it directly on C. So bringing up my Git bash, I'm going to go to the C drive with cd/C. That puts me on the C drive. And here I'm going to clone the repository by running git clone followed by that URL. You have to right click and paste. Control V doesn't work in the Git bash. So we now have this command. We'll go ahead and run that. All right, so once that's all finished, we now have the Unreal Engine Git repo, which contains the source code. So we're done with that. So what this did was created an Unreal Engine folder right here in my C drive. If I go to that, I'll see that we have some batch files, and we need to run some of these in order to download binary content for the engine, as well as installing prerequisites and setting up Unreal file associations. Now, before we go and run some of these batch files, I'm first going to rename the Unreal Engine folder so that I know that this is a source build. And specifically, if I look at the GitHub page, the version we have is 5.4.4. So I'm going to rename this to UE_5_4, just so I know that this is the 5.4 source build. Now we're going to run some batch files, and I'm going to do this from the command prompt. And I can open my command prompt to this folder on Windows by clicking on the file path and simply typing cmd and hitting enter. That's going to open my command prompt right here at C/UE54. Now, the first batch file we have to run is called setup.bat, and we can do that by simply typing setup.bat and hitting enter. Now this batch file is being run, so we'll wait a moment as it updates our dependencies. And on Windows, a warning message may appear, so we'll see if that happens. All right, so here's that pop-up. I'm going to click yes and allow it to continue. Okay, so now that that's done, we next need to run generateprojectfiles.bat. And just like with setup.bat, we just have to type generateprojectfiles.bat. And we need to wait for this to run. Now, once that's done, we're finished with the command prompt, and we can go back to our folder, which I have renamed to UE54, and we can open up Unreal Engine in Visual Studio. So we'll double click on UE5.sln, and here we have our source build of the engine. So make sure that the configuration is set to Development Editor Win64. And we're going to right click over here on UE5 and choose Set as Startup Project. And it's now time to compile Unreal Engine from source. Now, this may take a while depending on your machine. I'm estimating that for my machine, it'll take about 45 minutes. So to build, we're going to right click on UE5 and select Build. So grab a cup of coffee because this may take a while. All right, so I have successfully finished compilation. That took me 2,910.56 seconds. Let's see what that translates to in minutes. That comes out to 48.5 minutes, so slightly longer than I anticipated, and it may have taken longer for you. But congratulations, we now have Unreal Engine from source compiled on our computer. We can actually launch the engine. I'm just going to go ahead and start without debugging, and we'll give it a moment to load up for the first time. We'll let it compile the shaders. This part can take a while the first time as well. All right, now we've loaded up. We have the Unreal Project browser. We can open projects, and we can create new projects. So when we want to launch Unreal Engine from source, we simply launch up our UE5 solution. If you like, you can create one of the template projects or a blank one. So congratulations, we now have Unreal Engine from source. I'll see you in the next video.